The vagus nerve, when we talk about optimizing mood, boosting mental clarity, and enhancing the brain's ability to change and grow, this nerve is absolutely essential. It's not some fringe concept or trendy biohacking term. It's foundational biology. You can think of it as the communication superhighway between your brain and body, especially the systems responsible for emotion, digestion, heart rate, and even immunity. It runs from your brainstem down through your neck and into your chest and abdomen, touching almost every major internal organ along the way. But more than just anatomy, the vagus nerve plays a huge role in how you feel, how alert you are, and how well your brain functions over time. Now, most people are walking around completely unaware of this nerve's existence, yet it's silently shaping their daily experience. When the vagus nerve is functioning optimally, what's called having high vagal tone, you feel calm but focused. You're able to handle stress better, regulate emotions more effectively, and your brain is in a much better place to learn and adapt. On the flip side, low vagal tone has been linked to anxiety, brain fog, depression, and even inflammation. This nerve literally determines whether you're living in a reactive, stressed-out state, or whether you're moving through life with grounded energy and mental clarity. The vagus nerve is also the main driver of what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest system. When it's activated, it lowers your heart rate, slows your breathing, and sends signals of safety throughout your body. It's the opposite of the fight or flight state that most people are stuck in today because of chronic stress, poor sleep, digital overload, and a lack of physical movement. So, learning to consciously influence the vagus nerve means you can take yourself out of that anxious, wired, overstimulated mode and drop into a state where your body feels safe, your mind is sharp, and your emotions are stable. This is especially important when it comes to regulating mood. The vagus nerve helps modulate the release of neurotransmitters like acetylcholine and GABA, which are directly involved in calming the nervous system and reducing overactive thoughts. It's also involved in the transmission of dopamine and serotonin signals, both of which are crucial for feeling motivated, happy, and emotionally balanced. That's why people with stronger vagal tone often report better mental health overall. They're not constantly flooded with stress hormones or trapped in negative thought loops. And it's not just emotional well-being. The vagus nerve helps regulate inflammation, which is now known to be a massive contributor to cognitive decline and mood disorders. When the vagus nerve is weak or understimulated, inflammatory markers in the body rise. But when it's strong and engaged, it sends anti-inflammatory signals throughout the system, keeping you physically and mentally resilient. That's one reason why people with high vagal tone also recover faster from illness, trauma, and even psychological stress. The body and brain recover together. The really exciting part is that the vagus nerve is one of the few parts of the nervous system that we can influence voluntarily. You can train it, you can stimulate it. You can strengthen it just like a muscle, and the effects aren't subtle. With consistent daily practices, breathing techniques, cold exposure, humming, even just proper posture, you can significantly improve your vagal tone, which then creates a cascade of benefits: better mood, greater alertness, and more flexible, adaptable brain wiring. So if you want more control over your state of mind, your focus, and even your ability to grow mentally and emotionally, the vagus nerve is where it begins. Understanding it isn't just for neuroscientists. It's a tool every one of us can learn to use. Because once you unlock the vagus nerve, you begin to unlock yourself. When we talk about improving mood and emotional well-being, most people immediately think of medications, supplements, or maybe therapy. And while those can be important in some situations, there's something far more fundamental, and often overlooked, that governs how we feel moment to moment. That's the vagus nerve. It doesn't just influence our physical body. It's directly tied to our emotional state. If you've ever felt a wave of calm after a deep breath, a sense of comfort after hearing someone hum or speak in a soothing tone, or even a gut feeling that told you something was right or wrong. That's your vagus nerve in action. It's constantly taking in information from your body and environment and sending it back up to the brain to help regulate how you feel. The vagus nerve plays a critical role in managing your emotional balance by modulating the release of neurotransmitters, chemical messengers like serotonin and dopamine. These are the same neurotransmitters that most antidepressants target, but here's the key difference. By activating the vagus nerve naturally, you encourage your brain to do this on its own, without external manipulation. You support the system instead of overriding it, and that's much more sustainable in the long run. When the vagus nerve is functioning well, there's a noticeable shift in how the mind processes stress. Small things that used to trigger irritation or anxiety start to feel more manageable. You become more resilient, more emotionally flexible. That's because the vagus nerve is helping calm down the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain. It signals safety, it reduces the release of cortisol and adrenaline, it slows the heart rate, deepens the breath, and essentially tells your entire system, you're okay, you can handle this. That signal of safety is incredibly powerful, especially in a world where most people are living in a constant state of low-grade threat, whether from work pressure, relationship conflict, or information overload. And there's another layer to this. The vagus nerve also affects how we connect with others. When it's active, our facial expressions become softer, our vocal tone becomes warmer, and our ability to empathize improves. That's not just a social nicety, it's biology. It's the nervous system tuning itself toward connection rather than defense. When you feel connected, understood, and emotionally safe around others, your body releases oxytocin, another key molecule in regulating mood and building trust. So, the vagus nerve doesn't just make you feel better in isolation. It helps you become more available for connection, which is one of the deepest human needs we have. Now, this doesn't mean the vagus nerve is some magic switch that eliminates all emotional pain or difficulty. But what it does is give you access to a more grounded emotional baseline, access to clarity when things feel chaotic, and access to your own inner toolkit for regulating your state. For example, when someone has a panic attack or a depressive episode, what's often missing is that ability to self-soothe, to bring themselves back into balance. By strengthening the vagus nerve, you build that capacity. It becomes easier to return to center. And this is where practices like slow nasal breathing, chanting, humming, and even splashing cold water on your face come into play. These aren't gimmicks. They work because they stimulate specific branches of the vagus nerve that help lower the heart rate and calm the nervous system. Over time, with consistency, these practices train the brain to stay more balanced even when life throws curveballs. That's real emotional control, not the suppression of feeling, but the ability to ride the wave without getting swept away. So if you're looking for a way to feel more in control of your mood, less reactive, and more emotionally grounded, the vagus nerve is the switchboard. It's the system you already have inside you, waiting to be used, and once you understand how to engage it, you stop being a victim of your emotions and start becoming the driver. That's where real transformation begins. One of the most effective ways to tap into the power of your vagus nerve, and do it in a way that's quick, direct, and reliable, is through the use of breath and cold exposure. These aren't abstract practices. They're real, physiological tools that directly influence your nervous system. The key is to understand how and when to use them. Most people underestimate just how much control they actually have over their internal state. They assume focus, energy, or calmness are things that just happen or don't, depending on the day, but that's not true. Your body is equipped with systems that are ready to respond the moment you signal them the right way. Let's start with the breath, The breath is one of the few systems in the body that's both automatic and voluntary. That means it happens on its own, but you can also control it consciously. And when you do, especially when you slow it down and extend your exhales, you activate the vagus nerve. That long exhale is a signal to your body that you're not in danger. It shifts you out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. This matters because when you're in that calm, parasympathetic state, you're not only more relaxed, you're actually more focused. You have better control over your attention. Your brain is more alert, but without being frantic or scattered. There's one breathing technique in particular that's extremely effective. It's called box breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold again for 4. Just a few rounds of this can dramatically lower stress and bring clarity to your mind. Another is simply emphasizing the exhale. Inhale normally, but make your exhale twice as long. That's one of the most powerful ways to tone the vagus nerve in real time. And the beauty is, you can do it anywhere, before a big meeting, during a tough conversation. After waking up, it's portable, it's free, and it works. Now let's talk about cold exposure. Cold is a stressor, but it's a controlled one. When you expose your body to cold, like taking a cold shower or submerging your face in cold water, you create a temporary challenge to your system. And the vagus nerve responds by activating the parasympathetic system in an attempt to restore balance. That means after the initial shock of the cold, your body shifts into a more relaxed and focused state. This is why people report feeling incredibly alert yet calm after a cold shower. It resets the nervous system. It gives you a clean slate. You don't need to jump into an ice bath. Even something as simple as splashing cold water on your face or finishing your shower with 30 seconds of cold water can make a real difference. What's happening here isn't just mental toughness. It's nervous system conditioning. You're training your vagus nerve to respond more efficiently, and over time, that translates to better mood regulation, sharper attention, and greater control over how you show up each day. By using your breath and exposing yourself to controlled cold, you're sending intentional signals to your body that it's safe, focused, and ready to operate at its best. These are not hacks. They are fundamental levers of human physiology. And when you learn to pull those levers on demand, you stop waiting for clarity or energy to show up. You create it. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change itself, literally rewire, in response to experience, learning, or practice. It's what allows us to build new habits, recover from trauma, and develop skills at any age. But for neuroplasticity to actually occur, the brain has to be in the right state. It's not something that just switches on randomly. There's a rhythm and a biology to it, and the vagus nerve plays a critical role in creating that environment for growth. When we stimulate the vagus nerve, we're not just relaxing the body, we're preparing the brain to adapt and evolve. The connection here comes down to the brain's chemical and electrical landscape. When the vagus nerve is activated, it helps regulate the release of neurotransmitters like acetylcholine and norepinephrine, both of which are essential for plasticity. Acetylcholine helps sharpen focus and increases the signal-to-noise ratio in the brain, meaning it amplifies what's important and tunes out what's not. Norepinephrine, on the other hand, helps mark events and patterns as significant, which is vital for forming strong, long-lasting memories. So when you're calm, focused, and emotionally grounded, conditions created by high vagal tone, your brain is in an ideal state to absorb and retain new information. Now think about how this applies in your everyday life. When you're trying to learn something new, whether it's a language, a sport, or a behavior like meditation or journaling, you want your brain to be in a state of receptivity. If you're stressed, distracted, or emotionally dysregulated, you're actually closing the door on neuroplasticity. You're working against your biology, but if your vagus nerve is active and you've used tools like breathwork or cold exposure beforehand, you're now working with your biology. You're creating the kind of internal landscape where real learning and transformation can occur. This is also critical for unlearning. If you're trying to break a pattern, a thought loop, a reaction, a belief, you need your brain to enter a flexible, adaptable mode. That only happens when it feels safe. And remember, the vagus nerve is the messenger of safety. It signals to your brain, we're okay now. It's safe to change. Without that signal, the brain stays locked in protection mode, holding on to old patterns because it believes that's what's required for survival. Even sleep, which is vital for consolidating neuroplastic changes, is influenced by vagal tone. When the vagus nerve is active during the day, your nervous system is more likely to transition smoothly into restorative sleep at night. And it's during sleep, especially deep sleep, that the brain solidifies new learning and clears out waste. So this isn't just about what you do when you're awake. It's about creating a 24-hour cycle of support for your brain to thrive. When you engage and strengthen the vagus nerve, you're giving your brain permission to grow, adapt, and evolve, no matter your age, background, or previous limitations. Because neuroplasticity isn't just something that happens to you. It's something you can create. The connection between your gut and your brain is far more powerful than most people realize. What you eat doesn't just impact your physical energy. It directly shapes your mood, focus, and even your mental resilience. And the vagus nerve is the primary communication pathway in this relationship. It's like a two-way street between your digestive system and your brain, constantly sending updates back and forth. When your gut is healthy, the signals traveling through the vagus nerve are positive, calming, steady, and clear. But when your gut is inflamed or imbalanced, those messages become distorted, and it can lead to mood swings, anxiety, and brain fog. We often forget that about 90% of the body's serotonin, in the neurotransmitter that supports mood, happiness, and emotional balance, is produced in the gut. And how well that serotonin travels and functions depends heavily on the health of the gut microbiome and on the quality of the communication through the vagus nerve. So if your gut is in trouble, your mood will suffer, even if everything else in your life seems fine. That's why people who clean up their diet often report feeling less anxious, more emotionally stable, and mentally sharper, sometimes in just a matter of days. Certain nutrients play a huge role in this process. Omega-3 fatty acids, found in fatty fish like salmon and in things like flaxseed, directly support vagus nerve tone and reduce inflammation throughout the gut and brain. Magnesium is another one. It helps regulate nerve function and reduces the kind of chronic stress that wears down your nervous system. And fermented foods like yogurt, kimchi, kefir, and sauerkraut feed the gut with beneficial bacteria, which in turn send calming and supportive signals through the vagus nerve to the brain. It's not magic, it's biochemistry working the way it's supposed to. On the other hand, processed foods, especially those high in refined sugar, artificial sweeteners, and seed oils, can irritate the gut lining, disrupt the microbiome, and trigger low-grade inflammation. That inflammation interferes with vagus nerve signaling and creates the perfect storm for mental fog, irritability, and even depressive symptoms. So your daily food choices either nourish or disrupt that critical brain-body connection. This is why nutrition isn't just about physical health. It's a core part of how you support emotional regulation, focus, and long-term brain adaptability. What's on your plate is constantly influencing what's happening in your mind, and the vagus nerve is the bridge that makes that connection possible. Because when you feed the gut right, you feed the brain right. Building a strong vagus nerve isn't about doing something once and hoping for lasting change. It's about creating daily habits that train your nervous system to work for you rather than against you. Just like strengthening a muscle, consistency is what creates results. And the beauty is that most of the practices that stimulate the vagus nerve are simple, natural, and completely free. The goal isn't perfection, it's regularity. A little each day compounds into major changes over time. One of the most powerful habits you can develop is getting sunlight early in the morning. Natural light, especially within the first hour of waking, helps regulate your circadian rhythm and signals to your brain and body that it's time to be alert. This light enters through the eyes and begins a cascade of hormonal and neurological processes, including subtle stimulation of the vagus nerve. It sets the tone not just for your energy that day, but for your mood, focus, and even how well you sleep later on. Breathwork is another cornerstone habit. You don't need to spend hours in meditation to benefit. Just taking a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, to slow your breathing and emphasize longer exhales can have a significant impact. You can do this while sitting at your desk, standing in line, or even in the car. When you do it consistently, it conditions your vagus nerve to stay active throughout the day, which means better emotional regulation, improved clarity, and less reactivity. There's also movement. Walking, especially in nature, is a low-intensity activity that gently stimulates the vagus nerve. Add to that the rhythm of your steps and the focus of your breath, and you've created a moving meditation that supports both mental and physical health. Yoga and stretching are great options as well. Anything that links breath with motion and calms the body will feed into stronger vagal tone over time. And then there are the often overlooked tools: humming, gargling, singing, even laughing. These actions stimulate the vagus nerve through the vocal cords and throat muscles. They might seem small, but when layered into your day, they keep the nervous system flexible and responsive. By weaving these practices into your routine, you're not just managing stress in the moment, you're training your nervous system to live in a more regulated, resilient state. Because when you build habits that strengthen the vagus nerve, you're building a foundation for a clearer mind, a calmer body, and a more powerful life. So when we talk about improving mood, sharpening focus, and unlocking the brain's ability to grow and adapt, it all starts with the vagus nerve. This isn't about adding complexity to your life. It's about tuning into the systems you already have inside you and learning how to use them. Whether it's through your breath, your food, your daily routines, or how you manage your emotions, every choice you make is either strengthening or weakening that vital connection between your body and your brain. You don't need more stimulation. You need more regulation. You don't need to force change. You need to support the conditions where change can actually happen. The vagus nerve gives you that power, and once you begin to work with it, consistently, intentionally, you'll notice the shift. Not just in how you feel, but in who you are becoming, because the real transformation begins when you learn to regulate your internal world, no matter what's happening in the external one.